All right, welcome back to the Narrative Unsuppressed Gun Talk Radio. I'm sitting here with my friend and fellow shooter, Scott Lambin. Scott, how are you today?
I am well, man.
Awesome. So today we're going to talk about guns, specifically about a gun that was recently released.
Finally.
Yes, we're not just going to talk theory and other things that we have. We're actually going to get to a gun topic.
Right.
So very recently, and I had this gun before it was officially launched. So I got a call from someone that said, I've got a new Smith and Wesson here. I'd like for you to take photos of it so that we can launch it in X amount of days. So I was like, very cool. I didn't know anything about it. And then the next day, the gun shows up. And it is the M&P 380 Shield EZ.
The
M2.0.
Easy.
As in Easy E, except Easy Gun.
Not to be confused.
Not to be confused with
Eric Wright,
the rapper who has since passed. Anyway, so getting back to the 380 Shield EZ, it is a 380. And, when I opened the box, again, I didn't know what to expect. I checked it out. It was a little different. Wasn't what I was expecting. Then, a few days later when the thing is launched, it hits the internet and everyone starts talking about the gun.
Talk about the gun. How? Good or bad?
Well, a lot of it was bad. And
in typical fashion.
Well, yeah, I hate to say it, but I was amazed at the ruckus that this gun created, and you can speak to this as well. People, they weren't expecting the gun, so I was a little surprised. It's not like Smith was out on the waves going, something new and great is coming.
It just kind of came out of nowhere.
It just came out of nowhere.
Yep.
And it releases, and it's a 380. It's actually a fairly sizable 380. It's pretty large. It's a single stack. Let's see, the magazine is, so it's 8+1. And it's got some unique features. Probably the most notable, or two most notable things, are the grip safety and the thumb safety as well. So it's got two safeties on it that I don't think a lot of people are very fond of in the days of striker-fired type of weapons. So yeah, it was a little bit different. People responded negatively, and I was a little bit surprised because here's the thing. I've looked at this very closely, and although it's not the type of gun that I might be interested in, about a dozen different people came into mind upon further investigation of the gun, and then we took it out and shot it, and you know what? I was fairly impressed with it. So
the grip safety. First thing I saw with the system itself at SHOT Show was the grip safety. Didn't really think anything of it because one manufacturer that comes to mind that's kind of spearheaded that grip safety feature is Springfield Armory. One of the things that I saw online was people making
was it Springfield Armory or was it?
Well, it wasn't. It was Springfield Armory, most notable.
Right. In the plastic gun.
In the plastic gun. Right,
okay.
right.
Yeah.
So it was more what we see nowadays in the gun industry, something different, something that people aren't used to seeing.
Definitely different.
So I brought it up and I said, hey, man, you see this? And you're like, yeah, man, I saw it, but was kind of, had to express a little bit of professional courtesy and not blab to the world that you had it. And, that kind of, that goes with the gun industry and the media side.
Right.
So,
right.
But your exact words, if I remember correctly, was that pistol is a game changer when it comes to shooting pistol.
It is. So let's talk about who this gun is marketed to. And first of all, we've reached out to Smith and haven't had a chance to speak with them because one thing I wanted to understand is why they went this route with the design of this particular pistol. Now, not having that information specifically, I can tell you just from a user standpoint, this gun is meant for first of all, people that may have weaker grip strength, so they have trouble cycling something like, let's go with the industry standard, a Glock 19.
Right.
I carried a Glock 19 for 24 years, so
I still do.
Gen 2. I still have that Glock and actually still carry it from time to time. So it's easier to cock than that. It's got these cocking serrations in the back. So it's, people with weaker grip strength may not have very large hands, and people that need something that's reduced recoil. When I think about this gun, I think about my mom. She would be a great candidate for this gun. Where, a snub-nosed revolver is something we'd probably kind of push in that direction.
Something's going to go every single time, so long as that trigger's pulled hard enough.
Right. Pulled hard enough. They're hard to aim. I think we kind of pawn those off as easy to use guns, but I don't know how easy they are. If they were so easy, I'd probably use one myself. But
that's right.
I think they're easier guns to use. My wife would have been a great candidate for this, because when we started her in her pistol training many years ago, went out to get a gun. We were going to a 3-day class. That's something I did regularly, but she wanted to participate. We go to the gun shop, and I don't interfere because I want to be the husband that keeps his mouth shut about that type of stuff.
And typically they don't listen anyways.
Well, that's another story. But yeah, I wanted to let her figure it out for herself.
Right.
And sales guy takes her to a 19, and I don't say anything. I let it roll out, and at the time I was actually using MMPs, making the switch from Glocks. Anyway, long story short, she comes home with the Glock 19, go to a class. Day into the class, she doesn't like the gun. She's not able to shoot well with it. It's difficult for her to operate. It's more difficult for her to aim than anything. Put one of my extra MMPs in her hand, and she's like, "Oh, I want this. I want this gun now." It's like, okay. So anyway, it just goes to the point that there are different levels of shooters, and if you're not a dedicated pistol running ninja like some of us are, very proficient.
Yep.
This is a great gun for a whole different class of shooters, and it's actually very well done.
So you bring up not an interesting point, because it's not interesting. It's the ideal end user for it. Let's step aside from the M&P easy that we're talking about. Any gun in general, I don't think is particularly a one gun fits everybody platform.
No, impossible.
It is. It absolutely is impossible. So for Smith and Wesson to come out and take that definitive stance of, hey, this gun is for shooter X, but it's like our industry still wants to sling stones sideways because it doesn't fit their
right
wants or needs.
Right. Someone I read something that someone said, no one asked for this.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
when I read that comment, I was like, how do you know that?
Right.
Like,
right.
You're speaking for every gun owner of every skill level, etc., and we didn't ask for this.
Yeah.
So it's really surprising.
So, I mean, there is a level of customer service or listening to the customer base. Chris Cook from Timney, he made a very, very valid point of Timney always listening to not only their end users, but listening to who's actually making that product, them, right? Like
right.
There is a level of satisfaction that you need to adhere to or listen to your customer base from. But at the end of the day, if you have enough people saying, hey, we like the M&P full size, for example, like it's smooth, it's got a smooth trigger, this, that, and the other, but I'm a smaller stature person, I need something to fit my hand, they're going to do it. I mean, it's, companies aren't going to invest all this money into R&D and manufacturing processes and tooling and everything else that goes along with it to kind of throw piss in the wind. So, when you bring up that point about people asking or saying, well, we didn't ask for this. So, I've seen other manufacturers use Springfield Armory for an example. If you go to their Instagram page, they post, different pictures of like their newest TRP operator. People keep barking and barking and barking, saying we're demanding this 10 millimeter. We want this. We want this. We want this. And then they're getting a lot of guff for not jumping when everybody says jump. Mm-hmm. It's almost like a manufacturer gets in the news for something, and now all of a sudden they have to listen to everything that's being said at every given point in time. I haven't shot that. Going back to that M&P, I haven't shot it yet, but. Just dry firing it and manipulating the one that you have, it seems like it's a gun that just makes sense.
Yeah, listen, it's again, it's a specific user. That's what we have to keep in mind. It's not a perfect gun. There are things that I question on it on function. I wonder if the spring may be too light in it because it's so easy to operate and manipulate and charge the weapon. So I wonder about that. If your thumb rides the slide a little bit. Are malfunctions, easier with the easy. But it feels absolutely phenomenal in the hand. It shoots very well. I think it's closer to a 22 in its feel than anything.
Really?
And all the way down to the magazine. The magazine has these little tabs. You can put your thumb on and pull down the spring and load the magazine. So
if it's not the size, the fit, and the function of the gun, that's a telltale sign that it was made for a specific hard-end use.
Yeah, it's clear.
Take the magazine out and look at it.
Yeah. Another thing. So I think your son, Jordan.
Yep.
He would love shooting this gun, and it would give him the feel of something that's closer to a full-size pistol, which this actually is right there, without all the drama that comes with a larger caliber, but
to smaller people,
yeah,
or unexpected people.
And a 380 can be a lot in like an LCP type. And I'm not singling any manufacturer out, but let's face it, those little pocket 380s,
like the RM380.
I shot mine once just to make sure it functioned, and I'm going to assume it's going to work from here on out because I'm not shooting that thing again.
It's snappy.
Yeah,
it's snappy, and to somebody who's small. Such as a 10-year-old who loves shooting, having that, taking that element of surprise of that snappiness out is huge. I mean, that can make or break a shooter, especially when you're talking, trying to imprint or, spend good quality time with your kids that like to shoot. You put a 9mm in their hand, it's snappy, or a 380 for that matter, it's snappy. That might scare them off.
Yeah. Yeah. We can go down the feature set on this too. So it's got an internal hammer operation. So that would be the reason why there's a couple external safeties. There's, it doesn't have a safety on the trigger like we're used to with a lot of the plastic guns, which makes sense. It's actually a lot like the M&P 22 compact. And then you look at the loaded chamber indicator on the top, which I love these because it's like, I don't want to say dummy proof, but even a guy
it's
like
dummy
me,
proof.
I can tell fairly easy that there's something in the chamber, and it's got this indicator that pops up fairly high off the top. And I'm looking at this going, again, if you're not a super dry fire for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes a day, in and out of your holster type of person, and you want something that you can be safe with, you can operate easily and shoot well with, this gun is actually quite awesome as far as I can tell right now. Well, time will tell. It could break in a million pieces after 2,000 rounds. I don't know that, but
on the same token too, it's an initial run. It's an initial run.
It's awesome. I really like it. I like the gun. But again, so I take my buddy out, who's a pretty good gun ninja. Dude can straight lay it down,
right?
And he shot it, and he loved the gun.
Same sentiments as you.
Same sentiments. He's like, this thing's nice.
So let's talk about those loaded chamber indicators, because I've heard a lot of people say, not necessarily about this particular gun, but other ones that have them. It's just one more thing to get in the way, one more thing to fail. as it pertains to those specific end use platforms and whatever it be, I mean, we can talk about, loaded chamber indicators for pistols or battery assist devices for ARs or whatever you want to, any other accoutrement or added benefit that people put on guns or manufacturers build into guns. As it pertains to that, that feature doesn't really have an effect. Now, pending catastrophic failure, snapping into a million pieces and getting lodged in the chamber or something, that really doesn't have an effect on the cycle of operations of the gun, does it?
No, not at all. It's nothing to do with it.
It's simply a tool to use when you either when pulling your pistol out of the holster in a public environment and doing a press check. Low light. Yep. Just simply making sure that you have a round in battery ready to get to work if you need to.
Yep. And if I don't know about holsters with this yet, but if it's in your holster, you just check and make sure. Yeah, there's something in the chamber. That thing's bumped up pretty nice. It's
very discreetly.
Yeah.
You don't have to make a big deal out of it. I like it, man. So let me ask you about when you shot it. You've already talked about it's smooth. It's
smooth, very low recoil, returns back to on target quickly.
Easy to load.
Yeah, easy to load. Everything is just
easy.
I think I'll go back again to my spouse, and actually, a friend's spouse that was there during this class for 3 days, all day, 8 hours of shooting. They would have loved this gun.
Right.
They would have loved it because it's totally enjoyable. It's what it needs to be, and unless you want to bump up your game several notches, it'll do what you need it to do.
Right on.
Yeah.
So it's got an accessory rail. So for those light snobs, they can put a light on it.
Mm-hmm.
Ambidextrous safety slide locks, safety and slide locks, or just safety?
Safety.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Night sights, no night sights?
This one has no night sights. I don't know if it's an option yet. I haven't done much research on it outside of just playing with it since I've had it.
Cool. But the standard white 3-dot sights that are on it,
they're nice and bold.
Easy to pick up, bold.
Yep.
They don't bleed together like we see a lot of standard sights. Nice.
Yep. We were firing hammers with this thing, as fast as we could, and it was literally just placed them right next to each other.
Nice.
And I can do that well on some guns, and other guns I can't.
Yep.
This one was like
you're a wrong-handed shooter, though, aren't you?
No, I'm.
You're right-handed.
I'm a
with
uniquely ambidextrous shooter. So
you shoot everything from the shoulder, from the wrong-handed,
right-handed, left eye dominant, and I shoot long guns left-handed.
I hear you. Jordan is the same way, actually. My son. So, what ammo did you fire through it? Because you talked about this. You talked about the springs earlier.
So we fired some basic ball. I don't remember what brand it was, and I think there was some V Crown.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken.
And the only reason why I'm asking is because there's a lot of people out there. Obviously, if it's their EDC or their defensive pistol, they like to get into the expandables and the special end use ammo, which is good. It's great. There's a reason why is designed and manufactured. It's just sometimes, we fail to pay attention to the manufacturer's specifications as to what ammo, how hot or not, not the website perverts, but what ammo to shoot through it. A lot of times we'll see people, we see them on Instagram, well, not so much anymore. We used to of pistols exploding. And then once you dig into the comments, you'll see that they ended up blasting a bunch of ammo through it that they probably shouldn't have, and that's
super hot stuff.
Yeah, that's the problem. So I was just curious to see if you had a plethora of ammo, or it was more or less just to get out there first impressions.
We were out for the photo shoot, and it was what we had on hand, and I know I had definitely the ball, I forget, Echo or something I got off one of the bargain on sale type of thing, and I can't remember what the other one was. So,
I got you.
Yeah.
I'm definitely excited to shoot it and to put it through its paces on our website. I always like that new stuff. I'll be honest with you, when I saw it at SHOT Show, I was kind of taken back by that weird shape of the backstrap.
Mm-hmm.
But again, going back to those entry-level shooters or those shooters that aren't as confident in their abilities as some are not. I hear it a lot, man. People are asking, hey, what do you think about, and I use the XD for an example with as far as the backstrap safety goes on striker-fired pistols on plastic guns, just because, when Springfield adopted the XD as their striker gun,
right.
It was well received. It was
Right.
well received. It
Yeah,
was a Croatian gun that was brought to the United States under a very reputable name.
Yeah.
And Springfield's done a lot to that platform compared to where it was the CS2000 or whatever that model was. They've done a lot to it, and so I think they're, in my opinion, I think they might be the trendsetters as it pertains to kind of mainstreaming that backstrap safety on striker guns.
Right.
So a lot of people, I mean, I've been carrying a Glock in non-permissive environments for the better part of 14 years, going on 14 years. Have relied on them from Baghdad, Iraq to Afghanistan and even in China. So I've never had one fail me.
Right. Which is why I carried mine for, like I said, 24 years. It was the one that I believed would go bang every single time when I needed it.
Absolutely. So, but the flip side to that coin is, for a long time, having, I was born and raised in Geneseo. I know the Reese family very well. I got a 4.5-inch Springfield XDM 9, and I had Eclipse Gunworks do a whole bunch of work to the trigger and everything to that gun. And I would venture to say, if it wasn't for government restraints, I would carry that gun with me overseas. I've probably run my XDM harder in each range session than I have any Glock 17 that I've run overseas, just because we don't run our guns like a lot of people think we do overseas as it pertains to pistols. Right. But I mean, I've shot my XDM some more under rain, snow. Haven't cleaned it intentionally, and again, those small things, those small features that a lot of people, they'll sling mud at: grip safeties, loaded chamber indicators, that deliberate slide lock or slide takedown lever that rotates, such like the XD and the Smiths have. A lot of those things that people will use those as negatives, they haven't failed me.
So, along the lines of the XD, I have an M that I early adopted, and I'll be honest, I didn't really put many rounds through it.
Mm-hmm.
But where I got started with the Springfields was after shooting Glocks for a long time, I was starting to ride the gun so high in the back that it was cutting the web of my hand.
Yep.
And it was getting bad. It was to the point where I just couldn't stand anymore. I couldn't glove up enough. I couldn't bandage up enough.
It chew your gloves up. It chew your hands up.
It just, so, I've got all these scars in the web of my hand. So the XD9
Chicks dig
Tactical.
scars.
Remember the XD9 Tactical?
Yep.
So I got the not the standard, but that long version. And there's a guy that introduced me to it, and he was using it for IPSC shooting,
Mm-hmm.
For the stock division or whatever we were shooting back then. And so I got one of those, and barring I had an extractor issue with it earlier where it wasn't consistent, but it needed to be filed on the inside, I think I've got 5,000 or 6,000 rounds on that, and it's the finish is worn off. It's all scratched up. It's beat up. But I shot that for a number of years and a whole bunch of competitions, and the gun still runs fine. So, again, it's just trying to find something that works for you when something doesn't work for you.
Exactly. And that's kind of the main takeaway for that Smith is it was designed for somebody that again, either whether it be stature, whether it be confidence, whether it be shooting levels, it was designed for a specific end user, and I think we need to keep that in mind when we see something that's out of the ordinary for us.
Yeah.
Springfield, they, I'd hate to keep bringing Springfield back up, but like I use kind of them as that industry standard for striker fired grip safeties, and that is the main aesthetic that I see on the Smith EZ.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've never had a problem with the grip safety not working properly either. So again,
Exactly.
if I'd had the issue, I'd bring it up or I'd be done with it. I've got enough guns like that where it seemed great and it wasn't, and bye-bye because of something that came up. But I was too busy shooting them to worry about it.
Well, so and you've mentioned a few times the classes, whether it be, I know you've gone out to Iverson's place out west. I know, and I've been through a number of shooting schools myself, and before you can go from, kind of understanding the language of gun, you need to be fluent in the fundamentals of shooting.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And part of one of those 7 fundamentals of shooting is grip.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
Whether it be bolt gun, pistol, belt fed, shotgun, it doesn't matter. If it goes bang, you need to have a proper grip.
Yeah.
In every one of these pistols, up to and including the Smith and Wesson EZ, you need to establish a high, firm grip on that backstrap. 1, to be effective in your shot placement, and 2, for positive control, and 3, obviously, for the feature of that backstrap safety is to disengage it, and so you can pull that trigger all the way back to a controlled break. Again, that in itself, I think, is a lot of what people get lost on when it comes to quote unquote reviews or first impressions or just clickbait, man. And we can go on for days on this, but
well, let me ask you a question.
What's that?
Operationally, you've used these pistols a lot. I know a lot of shooters are waiting for the next thing. This just seems, it's like, I think guns is almost worse than electronics. It's some company is releasing something new every 90 days.
For sure.
And a lot of them are plastic guns. People are looking for something. I'm not sure what it is. What do you think, based operationally and what you've done and what you do for a living, what do we need that we're not getting from current pistols?
To be brutally honest, I think I'm not going to say that we have everything that we need, right? Because for me to say that would be extremely close-minded. I don't mean to get sidetracked here, but as it pertains to anything in life, I am a firm believer in the second you think you know it all, that's when something bites you in the face or in the ass, whatever, however you want to look at it. So for me to say that we have everything that we need, in my personal experience, overseas, in the States, and otherwise, what I have been running has worked for me. I'm a true believer in bare bones, minimalistic almost. Back in the 2004, 2005 days of, when tactical was cool. I mean, you see guys with everything but the kitchen sink mounted on their M4s.
Right.
I ran an aim point, like an aim point with a vertical flooring grip. Now I have a CQD sling swivel lug that's mounted on the bottom of my rail that I use for a miniature hand stop. And, and a SIG, Romeo reflective optic, or depending on what we're doing. But so to answer your question, I think our government should at least humor the idea of giving operators options instead of a one gun fits all. Instead of the SIG 320, instead of the Beretta, instead of the 1911, instead of the Glock 19 or 17 or SIG 226 or whatever the case is. Shooters have different body types. And so the more, and I know logistically that's almost impossible, and financially as well, but with as much money as our government spends on frivolous crap, we could go back to the basics and say, okay, So long as you qualify and so long as you have an understanding of this platform, there's nothing wrong with you carrying it. So long as the calibers are interchangeable, right? And I understand the whole magazine compatibility and this, that, and the other, but at the end of the day, man, in 17 years of working in non-permissive environments, I can count on one hand how many times I had to transition to my secondary. And out of that, I can think of 2, maybe 3 times where I'd actually have to use it.
Okay, so operationally, yes. So let's talk about, your average civilian in the United States. We do a lot of training in a lot of different ways, carbine classes, pistol classes, etc. But I would assume we'd be more likely to use a pistol in our lifetime, if as a regular just Joe Schmo, right?
As it pertains to defense, absolutely.
Okay, so you said it's far from perfect, and that it can be proved. Let's talk about optics and things that are going on pistols now, because you mentioned more parts,
right?
Okay, and I hear that a lot, and I completely understand that. So now we have optics, we have new trigger jobs. Now we're running compensators. And that's not new. None of this. Funny thing is, none of this stuff is new. It's just recycled. It's probably been 6 or 7 years since it was hot. So we're back to that again.
What was
speak to that?
Again,
is it making better shooters?
No.
Okay.
I mean,
but it makes it easier to shoot, I would assume.
Well, that's subjective, man. I personally, I think that's subjective, and here, excuse me, here's why. Is when you have a foundation, when you have a bedrock already established, all right, sight alignment, sight picture, you go through all 7 fundamentals of shooting. When you have that bedrock established, once you throw something on top of that pistol, as small or as minute or as compact as it is, that it goes back to that muscle memory. And I suppose if I had spent, when it was 6 or 7 years ago, about when optics ready pistols started really made their way into the industry.
I think I recently on my Instagram I posted a picture of a David Bowie. So David Bowie is like one of the first pioneers of the combat optic, and he was running these things back in, I want to say, like 2003 or something.
When you say
like
David
that.
Bowie, you don't mean the musician, right?
No, I mean Bowie Tactical Concepts. He was one of the original plastic gun smiths,
Right.
Customizers.
Yep.
So he's done that.
Actual
He's done
gunsmith.
that a lot. Yeah. So he was running them a long time ago. I trained with him at TDI for a number of years. So he had optics on his gun easily back in 2007, 2008,
Okay.
I think. And I have when I first got my M&P, I had him put a delta point on mine. And I could not back then make the transition to using it because I was so used to using sights, iron sights. I could not get it down pat. So I then put it away for all these years, and I just dragged it back out, I don't know, say 6 months ago, because it's all the rage now. And I'm like, well, maybe I should give this thing a try again because I didn't learn it right the first time.
Man, here's my 2 cents on that. Is it was beat into my head, sight alignment, sight picture, right? And then once I established that, it was beat into my head, front sight, front sight, front sight, front sight.
Right.
Where that goes is simply again that muscle memory aspect. And if I've spent all those years drilling that front sight into my intended target, once I we'll use the RMR for an example. Went down to Castle Valley Shooting Ranch in Utah for the release of the RMR for both pistol and shotgun, by the way. And I could not, for the life of me, bring myself to drill or to instinctively find that red dot and drill it to my target. I was always looking for that optics or suppressor ready front sight post and drilling it. You know, and what do they say? 1,400 repetitions makes muscle memory or something. I don't know what that number is, but here's what I do know. It was almost debilitating for me to try to get on target and get effective rounds down range as quickly as I could with iron sights.
That was kind of my conclusion, many years ago. Yeah.
And we're not the only two out there.
Yeah.
Now, and I can say the same for shotgun too. Shotgun's obviously a different story because shooting double-aught buck, it's double-aught buck. I've 8 times or 9 times the likelihood of hitting my target at close range than I do with one 9mm round. But it's still that instead of looking for that bead or looking for that front sight, now you're trying to find a dot. So to say that it doesn't make a better shooter, I might be kind of off base in saying that, but to say that it can create training scars, I'm almost confident that it can create training scars if you don't train with it properly.
Right.
With that, there's many different vehicles out there to dry fire. We talked about dry firing earlier, as it pertained to the EZ, but tons of different vehicles, tons of different methods out there to get better as a shooter. But at the end of the day, your bedrock in which you've established yourself as a shooter, it's going to be really hard to step aside from that and retrain yourself and everything you've learned up to that point.
Gotcha. Well, I think we've pretty much covered all the M&P 380 Shield EZ. We've got one here, and we're going to take it out and shoot a bit, get a little bit more familiar with it. But again, when it comes to these guns, take a look at them for yourself, figure out what's going to work for you, and then, you find out what works for those around you. You might be that person that's kind of every group and family has that guy, the gun guy, right? And everybody's like, what do you think I should buy? You might be that guy.
Now you're a consultant because you've shot a few times. You don't want to
be that guy.
Yeah.
But I definitely think this thing fills a niche. I think it's going to work for a lot more shooters than we're actually aware of.
Absolutely.
And time will tell. And I want to check back with Smith and see how well it's actually selling and who their in customers are winding up being.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll be. I'm sure there's going to be a feature on it on the website and other channels of getting the word out there for it. But like you said, Sean, I think it's important for people to take a look at something for what it is and how it fits their end use. Some of these long slide 17 guys, or some of these XD guys, or some of these these staunch 1911 guys, they might get their hands on something and say, "Man, this might be for me." From a defensive shooting platform. I don't, just seeing the gun and handling it, the little I have, I'm pretty confident in saying that Smith wouldn't say this is the end-all, be-all for all of our products, would they?
No, absolutely
right.
Not. And something new, something different.
And I have yet to hear a manufacturer actually come out and say that, like, this is the end-all, be-all. And I think that's, again, going down into a shallow rabbit hole. That's something that we kind of lose sight of as an industry as well, is like, pay attention to something for what it is, and then step outside of your comfort zone and say, could this help me?
Could it help me? Could it help someone else?
Right.
And if it's not, then it's not. But that doesn't mean it's not going to work might not work for you, but it might work for the next 5 after you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Cool. So, with that, man, we'll close out of here. Can't wait to see what that EZ holds, man. And, might have to get one down to Illinois for Jordan to get his little meat skinners on.
Yeah, I think he's going to like that. All right, we're going to wrap it up here from the Narrative Unsuppressed Gun Talk Radio.